Good evening and welcome to SVG-TV's news for Tuesday, July the 21st, 2020. I am Bhavin there with the details. NEP Shadow Minister of Health Daniel Cummings said it is worrying how Vincentians here at home have been exposed to the COVID-19, labeling the travel protocols as weak. Cummings, who was speaking on the NEP's virtual Monday night Facebook program, said he totally disagreed with the 24-hour quarantine that was in place for incoming passengers, knowing that some of these persons were coming from a COVID-19 hotspot.
That people coming in are required to do 24-hour quarantine. What is protocol about that? The evidence suggests that the period for incubation of this changing virus, it's mutating all the time, it is anywhere from 14 to 21 days. But you're telling me you put in place a quarantine for 1 day, and you tell me you're serious about protecting the people of this country? No wonder we are in where we are today. That is a joke.
Cummings said there are cases that the Ministry of Health could not say how persons contracted the virus, which could suggest that there could be more cases in SVG undetected.
Bothered by the fact that there may be many more. And because of the poor way in which the bringing back of people into the country has been managed. Let me quickly remind our listeners and viewers, this government has not closed our borders, not throughout all of the COVID scenario. What has happened is that there are places where airlines want to be flying, and so St. Vincent and Grenadines has been quick to jump on the bandwagon. And it has not been properly planned or executed. To tell me that in a time like now, when you're bringing people from one of the hottest hotspots in the world, to ask people to do voluntary quarantining, tells me you don't care about the people of this country. It tells me that your interest is seeing passengers coming back and hopefully recovering your dead economy.
The opposition MP made comparison of SVG to other countries in the region, which he said have handled COVID-19 in their country remarkably and continue to do so.
Is ranked #1 in the world in the way it has handled COVID-19. And up to now, Trinidad nationals are not allowed to come back to Trinidad, even within the election confines, even for health issues, because the government has decided the risk is not worth the chance of bringing back people, especially if you're coming from certain parts of the world. So let us look at the World Health Organization recommendation, Colin, but let's bring it down to the Caribbean. A few weeks ago, Antigua started bringing people in, and look at the disaster. They had many cases in a short period of time. But compare and contrast that with Barbados. Barbados has restarted in a limited, controlled way. They're bringing back of tourists. But the protocols that Barbados has put in place have people literally going through hoops. Right.
With 21 active COVID-19 cases, several of which are from the 2 recent international flights out to the US, the government has since amended the travel protocols. All incoming passengers are now expected to produce a mandatory negative PCR test result. In addition to the mandatory PCR test result, all passengers must provide proof of reservation of a hotel for 5 days approved by the Ministry of Health to ensure mandatory quarantine. PCR tests will be done by the health officials after 5 days, which will determine whether the persons should be further quarantined. And the law does not give anyone the right to interfere in the space of a registration officer who is dealing with a voter. So says Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, who was speaking on radio on Sunday on the issue of voter registration and what is permissible by law. The Prime Minister said that the registration officers shall comply with the election supervisor, who has the authority over them.
Supervise the performance by the registering officers of their functions. In fact, Section 10, subsection 6 of the Act says, the supervisor of elections shall be the chief registering officer, and he shall supervise the performance by the registering officers of their functions under this Act, and every registering officer shall comply with such general or specific directions that he may give.
PM Gonzalez said the country's elections law, the Representation of the People's Act, gives permission for the appointment of scrutineers for enumeration and not registration. He was commenting on a recent incident in Barely involving the NDP's prospective candidate for the area at next general election, Benjamin Exeter, and the registration officer, Vibert Pear, who reportedly suspended voter registration when Exeter refused to leave the room.
Mr. Exeter, for these purposes, has no special status because he was once a candidate and that he may be a future candidate. He only becomes a candidate when he's duly nominated on nomination day, as you quite correctly stated it.
PM lauded the registration officer Vibert Pear and election supervisor Dora James, whom he said are honest individuals with integrity. He said they used good judgment dealing with the recent incident in Barely in the Central Leeward constituency. Meanwhile, supervisor of the elections Dora James said that the observers to the registration process have always been welcomed. However, she noted that recently there have been a lot of challenges. Speaking on NBC Radio this morning, James said observation was taking place even before she assumed the position of supervisor of election. She said observers are beneficial to the registration process because they can help identify persons who are not from a constituency. She, however, noted that some persons have the wrong concept of being an observer of the election process.
We need to have an understanding of the whole process of observation. Now, observation, we use our eyes and we take the scene in and we see whatever, we note things and so on. Maybe if the situation arises where the officer or the registrant speaks loud, you might be able to hear something. But we have been seeing where persons, and as I was told as supervisor of elections, that persons should sit in. They should sit in and hear the information given by the registrant. Or they should be as close as to hear so that they can stop the registration. Now we differ. I differ as supervisor of elections. You can observe the spaces there. Persons are coming in, you can see the persons. If you're unsure who the persons are, you question.
She says some persons have been turning up at registration centers, making others feel uncomfortable and intimidated, noting these persons deserve their privacy.
When persons are giving their information, they have a right to give it in privacy. They are speaking to the registration officer. Now, they should not be intimidated. There are many persons who come to the registration center and they are weak in different ways. And we need to understand that and to respect that. If there is a situation where, as I said, you feel that this person is not truthful in terms of turning up. When I say truthful, I mean turning up at the center to register in a constituency where they have not lived for 6 months, we need to know. We need to know, because, and there are other persons who share those information and we congratulate them, we thank them and we encourage them to do that.
James encouraged those who are observing the registration process to give persons their space to allow the registration process to go smoothly.
But we say from the registration office, from the electoral office, from the office of the supervisor of elections, that persons must be comfortable, they must have their space when they are giving information, and they must feel good coming forward rather than hiding because they are not comfortable. So we welcome the observation at all costs, but we ask that observers give some space to allow for the process to go smoothly and to allow for persons who are eligible to come forward and give their information.
In other news, no one should be fearful to speak out and speak up under an NDP government. So said party leader NDP Dr. Godwin Friday while addressing a virtual youth forum recently. Dr. Friday said that once in government, persons should not be afraid to access help even if they are not an NDP supporter.
I'm offering something different. People say, Friday, you're talking, but you're just like any other politician. I said, no, you can't say that because you've never seen me in government. And I promise you that I am different. Our team will be different. We will have an approach that looks after people. One that takes a zero-tolerance approach to corruption. One that will end the victimization in this country. Do you think if somebody comes to me in government and says, Dr. Friday, I had 3 children, I can't put bread on my table, I'm going to ask who you vote for? You think if I see somebody on the road cutting the bush, I know what they get for that. And I know that that person didn't support me. But we are in government. You think I'm going to tell that person to go home? We are all one nation, one people, one Vinci.
Dr. Friday said persons in authority need to be more accountable and responsible, which is what an NDP-led government will ensure.
I want us to be proud, but not arrogant. Don't turn anybody away. The New Democratic Party is not a club. It is a movement that takes all the disaffected people of this country, all the people who have hopes and dreams for a brighter future, all of them. They may disagree with some things that I say or we say, but we all have a common cause to say we believe in a brighter future. When we get there, we can work out our differences. We must believe that, otherwise we are doomed. Hope is necessary for us to take the next step. It's not a sprint. It is not a marathon. It's a relay. And we must have new people taking the baton from time to time so that we can keep our pace up.
Wounding and theft identified as 2 trending crimes in SVG. This and other stories coming up when we return with more local news. Stay with us. Welcome back. Wounding and theft are 2 of the highest trending crimes in SVG, and the most common throughout all the police districts. According to statistics from the police in this current period, 31% of the crimes are wounding, while theft is around 27%. Speaking during the RSVG Police Force Facebook Care Serve Protect program, Assistant Superintendent Junior Simmons encouraged citizens to be vigilant and very careful with personal property. He also noted that there has been a slight increase in unlawful sexual intercourse in the Northwestern and Southwestern police divisions.
Commander and the officers within this division would like to inform the residents that there is a slight increase in reports of unlawful sexual intercourse in the area. So the police is asking parents and guardians to be more vigilant and to implement better supervisory mechanisms to protect their children. They are therefore asking persons to report every crime and offences, no matter how minor they may be, and to be vigilant when it relates to the crime of theft of personal items and produce.
ASP Simmons said some of the most common crimes in the Grenadines have to do with outdated liquor and vehicle license, and urged residents to follow the law.
The Grenadines Division would like to remind the shopkeepers operating throughout the islands that it is an offense to sell intoxicating liquor without a valid license. Persons who are engaging in this practice are therefore advised to cease and desist and to ensure that their licenses are paid and are up to date. The officers would also like to inform the motorists throughout the islands that it is also an offense to operate an unlicensed motor vehicle or to drive without a valid driver's license. These persons are to take heed, and other members of the public are also asked to note and to comply with the traffic rules and regulations when operating on the streets of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Some of the other criminal offenses reported in SVG for the 6-month period are 9% damage to property, 8% burglary, 5% criminal assault, 2% liquor license, 5% traffic offenses, 3% attempted burglary, 2% robbery, 2% criminal trespass, 2% controlled drug, and 2% threats. And the Ministry of Agriculture recently held an integrated weed management workshop to educate farmers on how they can prevent and control weeds, which oftentimes can hamper food production. Weeds are considered a major threat to the natural environment as they can destroy native habitats, threaten native plants, and choke natural systems such as rivers and forests. Agriculture Officer at the Plant Protection and Quarantine Department, Michael Delplesh, said an integrated weed management system utilized various methods to prevent weeds from getting onto a farm.
Things that you can do to achieve this: you can, of course, quarantine. That is very important, where you look at what weeds are on your farm and those that you want to keep out from your farm, so you take measures to avoid getting those onto your farm. It's a very difficult one, but it's very important. So for instance, if certain weed seeds want to be introduced into the country, we have to look at it and determine whether it would become a serious weed problem within the country before we give approval for the importation of those weed seeds. If you notice that there are certain weeds growing in your field, you can actually go and pull these out, rogue them, so that they do not become established.
Weeds are everywhere and oftentimes are difficult to control. The Agriculture Officer highlighted some of the biological control methods farmers can utilize.
You use strategies like live mulch, and we discuss a number of cover crops that could be used to control weeds, not just in banana but in other crops. And there are weed species that are quite effective as cover crops. But these cover crops should have certain qualities. For instance, they must be shade tolerant, they must grow and establish quickly. They also should give you a very good cover, so that they are able to smother out any weeds. And if you have a legume cover crop, that would be of additional benefit, where the legume would tend to add nutrients to the soil. And then you have the cultural means of managing weeds, and this range from mulching, cutlassing, use of a weed trimmer to manage the particular weeds in your field.
The most popular means of controlling weeds is the use of chemicals. The Agriculture Officer highlighted why this method must be used as part of an integrated approach, as well as some of the precautions farmers must take.
Also at the chemical methods, and this is of course the most common, but we acknowledge that there are lots of herbicides that seem not to be very effective against weeds today. And that is because weeds have this ability to develop resistance very quickly. So what we are seeing is that a number of weeds have developed resistance to a number of pesticides that are currently used to manage weeds. And so we have to use all these different strategies in order to effectively manage our weed situation. And so farmers in using pesticides, of course, have to take the necessary precautions, use their personal protective equipment, and ensure that they dispose of the empty pesticides containers in the appropriate manner. We should triple rinse them and then puncture, and then we dispose in our garbage collection system. So these do not stay in the field and become a problem and litter the environment.